Hello and welcome to We Are Nantucket. We are grateful to the Massachusetts Department of Education for their grant for the after-school programs and also to the Dreamland Theater Foundation. Who I am most grateful for are the students who have been doing the interviewing, learning the technique of interviews. I think the most important thing about this exercise and project is that the students learn to question and listen very carefully and ask follow-up questions of the adults, and they learn a lot of other people's experiences.
Hi, my name is Rowan Scola. It's January 7th, 2023, and I'm here with Elin Anderwahl. Hi, Elin.
Hi, Rowan.
With my first question, I sort of want to start from the beginning.
Okay.
Where were you born?
Well, I was born in Manhattan. My mother and father lived out on Long Island, but her doctor was in Manhattan. Pretty quickly, we moved up to Connecticut, and I grew up in Rockville, Connecticut.
What brought you to Nantucket?
My brother's girlfriend went to school in Colorado with Bruce Killen, and she said, you need to come to Nantucket and meet Bruce. You'll love Nantucket. And we came over, and it was true. I did love Nantucket. Very quickly, I ended up deciding to move here for the summer. I had just bought a house in Newton Lower Falls, and I never really lived up there because I fell in love with Nantucket and ended up here instead.
Have you sort of seen a change in Nantucket from when you first got here to how it is now?
Oh yes, big changes. I have to say that I loved it more back then. But yeah, it was a very great place to raise my kids. I was a single parent and they loved it here and still do. They come back every summer and spend the summers here.
What was your first job after you stopped college?
After I stopped college, I took my horse and went to Texas. And after that, different things. I moved around a lot, it seems like. First real job, other than training horses, might have been in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was the abortion counselor at Grady Memorial Hospital. I was working for the Center for Disease Control, doing illustrating, and they needed somebody to do the job, and I was there, and I volunteered. So I did it for a while. It was nice working with people, young people.
When we talked a little bit yesterday, you began to talk about how you worked down in Argentina on a boat with whales.
I was fortunate to have a family connection to Roger Payne. He invited me out to Argentina to whale camp, where they worked with right whales. And that was quite a wonderful experience. I got to see the penguin rookeries and the elephant seals and all kinds of things, but mostly we worked with right whales. We used rubber boats and went out and darted right whales to get DNA samples and find out just where they were, what their heritage was and things like that.
I know that you fix boat sails.
Once I came to Nantucket, doing kind of handcrafts and upholstery, and I rented a little house through Ann Killen up on Center Street. And very quickly, people started coming to me because I had this big industrial sewing machine, and they wanted me to fix their sails, which is something I'd never done and hadn't really even sailed that much. And a friend of mine said, you know, you've got the Cadillac of all sail repair people, or sail people, up in Marblehead. Why don't you go up there and see if they'll train you? So I did, and I can remember sitting out in front of Hood Sails in Marblehead thinking, they're not going to want to train. Why would they train me? But I had gone all the way up there, so I went in and talked to Robbie Doyle, who was the general manager at the time. He has his own sail shop now. And they took me on as an intern, and I worked all winter. And they made sure I learned things that I would probably come across down here. They gave me a hood franchise with the shop, and so if people called up when they were on their way to Nantucket, they would say, we have a shop there, and we'll be ready for you when you get there. So that worked out really well. There hadn't been anyone here doing sail repair for 12 years before I arrived, and that was a very elderly woman, probably about my age now, and I never got to meet her, but it worked out well. Very quickly, I became a busy sail repair shop.
Are you still doing that now?
Yes, I am.
Do you enjoy to sail? Do you sail yourself?
I love to sail, and I did a lot of sailing when I was younger. Once I got here, then I did lots of sailing.
You've been on Nantucket for a while, so if there was one time that you could go back to, when would it be?
Oh, when I was younger, of course. I think Nantucket was a wonderful place. When I first came here with my 2 kids, I was a single parent. We lived on an old fishing boat in the harbor until it sank. And then a friend offered me her summer cottage to live in. We just kind of went on from there. Eventually, I found a rental. We were all in the Nantucket Shuffle, where you rented for the summer, and then you had to move out and rent for the winter. And but it was a wonderful place to be. And I lived in town, and I worked in town, and I felt like I knew everybody on Nantucket.
Sort of changing topics a little bit here, but who do you think has been your biggest inspiration throughout your life?
My biology teacher from high school. She was a wonderful person, and she meant a lot to me.
I've heard that you have sailed with someone who is quite famous. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Walter Cronkite called me one afternoon and asked me to do some work on his boat. And I went over to the vineyard and looked at the boat and figured out what he wanted me to do. And that was the beginning of a wonderful experience for me, because I got to sail with him regularly. And I am still very good friends with one of his captains. And he used to call us his all-girl crew. And it was wonderful.
Is there a memory about sailing with Walter that sticks out to you?
Sailing with Walter was great. We used to go over to the vineyard and get the boat ready, and his wife, Betsy, was a wonderful cook, and she and I was the cook on board. I also was seasick almost every time we went out of the harbor, because I'd be down below getting everything ready, and then pretty soon I'd have to go lay down. But it passed pretty quickly after we got on the way. And Walter was always impressed because I sometimes made apple pie in the little gimbaled stove that was on the boat. He usually came with us on the deliveries until he might have to go back, because he was still involved with CBS at the time. So we'd pull in somewhere where there was an airport, which isn't everywhere. And then he'd get off and go back to New York, and we'd keep on going down to Florida.
What do you think Nantucket is going to look like in the future?
Underwater? I don't know. I feel very lucky that we're out on the Milestone Road on the top of a hill. I don't know how, if we're ever going to be able to do anything about global warming to save places like Nantucket.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to add?
I'm not sure. I just know that Nantucket has been very good to me and my family. My brother is an architect, and he designed my house here. Thanks to Henry Coffin, I was able to buy property here. Henry and Florence were really good friends, and wonderful people, and they had a lot of property on the Milestone Road, so they subdivided and sold me a lot, and that made a big difference to my family and I, and we love it. My son calls it Underworld, and it's been a wonderful experience to be here. I've been here almost 50 years, and it's been a good, very good thing for us.
Is there anything in particular that's really made you stay on Nantucket?
Well, when I first came to Nantucket, I'd been in Newton in a suburban neighborhood for almost, well, a couple of years anyway. And I didn't have that many friends up there. When I first came here, it was like all of a sudden you were friends with everybody in town practically. It was a very friendly place. My kids loved it here. They used to hitchhike everywhere. Back then, it wasn't scary to have your kids hitchhiking. And until we got the house, we lived in rental houses, which was fine. You could always go to the beach, and there were always beaches with nobody there, if you knew where they were. My daughter had a horse here. It was a good place. And it's pretty much always been that. I've lost a lot of friends over the years, from people moving away and people passing away, but it's always been a very wonderful place to live.
Who used to be some of your closest friends?
Well, for a long time, Gwen Gallagher, who owned the Opera House, was one of my best friends. We used to spend a lot of time together. She was a real character and a wonderful person. I really enjoyed her friendship. She lived down by the marsh on Francis Street, and in an old cow barn that she had all fixed up. And it belongs to the land bank now, I think. But we used to have yard sales on weekends, and we would do things together, and I got to be very involved with the Opera House Cup race through Gwen, where we went every year and registered all the boats, and we all got to know all the different captains and the different owners of the wooden boats that were in the race. She was great. Nice person to know.
Do you have any advice that you would give to me or someone my age?
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure I'm the greatest person to give advice to. I always kind of did whatever I felt like doing. But I think if you can find something to do in life that you love, then you're really set. It's a really good thing to love what you're doing.
That's really good advice. Thank you so much, Elin, for your time.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.